We getting ready to go live. We can talk about it later.
How you gonna change the things around you? Oh, what you gonna love inside of you? Oh, when you gonna hear his revelation? Oh, oh, let it move inside of you. Life ain't no.
Hey,
Welcome, beautiful souls, to Infinite Perspectives with your host, Michelle Diamond, and of course, the luminous Linda Boston. And I am Michelle Diamond, CEO of Next Level Promotion and PR for Linda Boston, and co host of Infinite Perspectives. Linda?
And I am Linda Boston, performing, literary, and teaching artist, founder and president of Peer Incorporated, which stands for Portable Educational and Entertainment Repertoire, and one that's always going to remind you that you are the change you seek.
Absolutely. And just to let you know, Infinite Perspectives is proudly brought to you by Peer, Next Level Promotion, Carlotta Cole, the brand, Moniker Enterprises, and of course, Unlimited Networks Property Management. Tonight's conversation is about transformation, mindset, resilience, justice, and the blueprints of what it truly means to become wired to win. Our guest is a true powerhouse of purpose, the founder of Genesis Life Strategies, a justice impacted advocate, an award-winning leader, scholar, mentor, and author of Wired to Win, the Success Doctrine. Robert Wood, welcome to Infinite Perspectives.
well, first of all, I'd just like to say thank you for having me. I appreciate being here on this dynamic platform, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Well, Robert, I'm here to tell you, you are a game changer and moving the world. Let's start at the foundation. Tell our listeners about your early journey and your background, your education, and what first shaped your mindset toward leadership and service.
But the thing that's shaped my mindset toward leadership and service is when I was younger, out here in San Diego, California, I was involved in the streets heavily, right? Gangs, drugs, all the stuff that young Black men tend to get involved in socioeconomically disadvantaged areas, right? Often even in affluent areas. And so by me being involved in those things, I had been to prison 7 times. The 8th time, instead of state prison, they took me to federal prison. I got sentenced to 25 years. And when I got sentenced to 25 years, I said, something has to change. There's something that I'm doing that isn't right. I looked at my kids in the courtroom. I looked at my mom in the courtroom and thought, I have so much time, I may not see my mother alive again. When I see my kids, they may be adults. And so if I don't make some changes now, when? And so the first thing I did in order to start making those changes was got in touch with my spirituality, tighten my connection with God, started to reach out to him in prayer and things like that, just to make sure I was okay, right? And in addition to that, I knew that education would be a big component in changing my life. Because I always tell people that once you change somebody's worldview, they won't react to the world the same anymore. And so a person whose worldview has changed and they look at the world as a place full of opportunity, full of chances, and they look at the world as something that they are a citizen of, and that they need to not only pull their bootstraps up and change in, but they also need to help others in, then they'll begin to behave that way because now they look at the world differently.
Mm,
And so part of changing my worldview was beginning to watch world news,
mm,
national news, as opposed to just local news. Not just looking for what was exciting, what was hip, what was cool, but really looking to see what was going on a global level and getting a picture of how I could fit into the world and what I can mean to my people, meaning Black people, and my people, meaning just fellow citizens of the planet. And that was something that sparked my change journey.
that's interesting. You should say that. My late husband was a returning citizen, and you were saying all of the things he said when he came out. You are just as impacted, and you have turned your experience into advocacy. So, how did that lived experience begin shaping the man you are today?
Well, along with lived experience comes the knowledge of what other people are going through. See, if you don't have lived experience, then you can look at people and you can have empathy and you can try to imagine what they're going through. And empathy is very important, it's really big. But with lived experience, you know exactly what they're going through because you've been through the same or extremely similar. And so by being able to look to a young man or a young lady and say, you know what, I know what you're going through. I know what I went through when I was your age. And to be able to give them those stories and to be able to give them those perspectives and to be able to put them in the mind frame that I was in at that age, to be able to really meant a lot, you know, because when somebody is talking to me, if I can tell that they understand me, it makes a big difference. I had a friend named Lewis Reed. He was the director of, it was called Cut 50 at one time. It's now called Dream.org. And he was the director at that time. And one of the things he told me when he talked to me, he said, one of your friends, a guy named Weldon Angelos, talks about you really good all the time. He said, you've been in there helping people get in college. You've helped people with homework. You know, you've been a blessing to everybody you've been around. And I understand all the education you have. But when I talk to you, listening to the way you talk, somebody just meeting you might not understand how much helping them means to you. And so I want you to remember in the process of doing this work that people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And so I took that in and kept that in my mind. And that was in the process of Lewis Reed and Weldon Angelos and others at Dream.org advocating for the First Step Act, which would later let me out of prison.
Wow.
5 years early.
That's amazing.
Outstanding. Outstanding.
That's absolutely, yes. I love that. So when it comes to the transition, and you talked about empathy, you talked about, you know, the whole dynamic, what do you feel it's important for someone to comprehend the mindset that you have when that transition happens?
One of the most important things for people to comprehend is don't worry about who believes in you and who doesn't believe in you. That's one of the reasons it's so important to connect to the higher power. Because one of the things you hear people saying constantly is, I want to do this or I want to do that. And we'll give some examples, right? I want to start an auto detailing business. I want to write a book. I want to do movies when I get out. And they say these things, but when they say them, you ask them why they're not moving. Oh man, my family's not supporting me. My girl's putting me down. My homeboys ain't even, you know, they're buying, you know, food or whatever it is, clothing from other people, but they won't buy my brand. And what you have to do is you have to put that to the side, know that there are billions of people on this planet, and that for successful people, for the most successful people, most of the people who they deal with, most of the people who purchase their brand, who come to their comedy shows, who watch their television shows, who watch their news shows, who look at a platform and a brand like this to get information from it, they don't know those people. You know, they say, and I got this from the Bible, right? he who is the servant of the most people will be the greatest among you all. And that doesn't just go to life. That translates right over to business. That hits business right on the target. And so when you're thinking about doing something, if you've been incarcerated, if you're justice impact, if you're having a hard time finding a job, if you're struggling with something, you have to know that keep moving and grooving. It's going to be all right. And when you begin to win, the people who need to be on board with you will get on board with you. And the people who are just hating anyhow will sit back and hate while you rise.
I like that.
Yeah.
And the way that the questions that I'm posing are aligning, it's simply amazing to me. When we talked about what mindset that person should have making that transition, and you answer that. Now we're talking about the Success Doctrine, right? And the winning mindset. So you explained a lot in detail, and you even gave examples as to I want to do this or I want to do that. And a lot of people have to also comprehend that it's not just about wanting. Your mind, body, and soul, everything has to be aligned, right? In order for things to fully manifest. Because if you don't believe in the power of you, why would somebody else buy into what you're trying to sell, right? Because if you're not in it and totally embody what you're doing, then a lot of times it goes on deaf ears. And with that being said, you wrote the book called Wired to Win, the Success Doctrine. What does it truly mean to be wired for success?
Wonderful question.
What it truly means to be wired for success is that you reclaim your birthright, not just as a human being, but as a citizen of this planet, right? So when I talk about being wired to win, I'm talking about something that babies do, animals do. Think about this. Lions, tigers, they have to win every day to get their food. If they lose, they die. They have to win. Babies, when they're born, we don't always know when a baby wants something. Immediately when they're born, nobody tells them to do this, but they can begin to compete through crying and cuteness to get their needs met.
Literally.
Yes, and their wants met.
Mm-hmm.
Roses, if there's no place else to grow, a rose will find a crack in the concrete and grow right up through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything that God created was created wired to win. Nothing was created without winning wiring. And humans are not an exception. We're not an exception to the rule. We're exceptionally attuned to this rule. And so what happens is, at some point, you may hear, I can't. But when you see young kids playing in the yard, they believe they can do anything.
Mm-hmm.
I can almost guarantee you that you've had kids, if you've been around kids before, and most of us have, walk up to you and say, how do I fly? They want to know how to fly.
Yeah.
Because guess what? Nobody's told them they can't. So in their mind, they can fly.
And they might try it.
And they might try it. And you see people who are short in stature, like myself, say, I'm going to grow up to be a professional football player. And in some cases, people tell them no, and they have the motivation to push through. And you get guys like Darren Sproles and some of these other pro football running backs that are 5'7", 5'8", and just tearing the field up. You get your Spud Webbs that are like 5'5", 5'6", and he's slam dunking and blazing it up. And so being wired to win is something that we are, until we let outside influences impose limitations on us, until we let societal norms impose limitations on us, until we let negative thinking impose limitations on us. We're all born wired to win. So being wired to win is the way that you're born. And my book Wired to Win, the Success Doctrine, was written to show people the same way that I had to get my winning wiring back, how they can get their winning wiring back. And for that, that's what we have to change our mindset for. That's why we have to get in tune with ourselves spiritually. That's why we have to have belief. That's why we have to set definitive goals and set micro goals to meet those definitive goals. That's why we have to understand how much we need community. Why do we need community? Because once again, the greatest among you will be the servant of you all. And so we need to find community, not just to help us, but so that we can serve them. And in doing so, we enlarge ourselves.
Can you say that quote one more time?
We need to find community, not just to help us, but so that we can help them. And in doing so, enlarge ourselves.
You said something about the servant. The servant serves.
Oh, the greatest among you will be the servant of you all.
That's powerful.
Because when you look around the world, you look around in business, why is Elon Musk the richest man in the world? Because regardless of how you feel about him, he's found ways to serve every individual on this planet. Microsoft has done it. All of these multi-mega billionaires, they're not just billionaires because they're billionaires. They're billionaires because they figured out a service or goods and services that they could deliver to every person on this planet. How does Amazon do it? Jeff Bezos, who was the richest man in the world for a long time. Amazon. They sell everything. And he doesn't just sell everything. His service is, whether you're a fan of Amazon or not, I know there was some things going on with Amazon and lack of DEI and all that. So I'm just using it as a model. I'm not trying to promote them.
Not pro that.
I'm just using it as something to look at, right? And I'm not demoting them either. I'm speaking on them in neutral terms. But when you look at Amazon, what Amazon started off doing was selling books. Right. Then they moved up to selling other things. Then they moved up to selling platforms and servicing people's digital needs. Now what Amazon does is they say they're great at logistics too. They deliver for other platforms. And you can get on Amazon and set up a whole store. There are millionaires made off of Amazon because Jeff Bezos has figured out a way to serve the customer. He's figured out a way to serve the businessman, business to business. He's figured out a way to serve the world from that platform.
The world and its pets. Yeah. Yeah. Everybody and everything.
Everybody and everything. If you have a pet, you can go right on Amazon and get what you need.
You know, you are correct. And I'll say this, and you referenced birthright, you reference people put limitations on themselves, you reference, successful businesses and successful people that we could actually evaluate and say, hey, they have something that's working. What is it they're doing that's working? Is it the mindset? Is it foundation? What is it? What did they tap into? And you said a lot. You stated birthrights, and that leads to my next question. Many people feel stuck in cycles, right? Mental, emotional, generational. How does the Success Doctrine help people break those loops? And before you answer that, I wanted to point out why I came to that question after I referenced what you stated in the beginning about birthright and the two examples you gave of success. If we look at that and then your answer to this, it would help bridge that gap of understanding.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the reasons I talk about birthright, because the Creator made us all geared for success. As we've talked about earlier, with the lions, the tigers, the babies, the roes. And so it is your right to at some point thrive. You were born to win. You were born a winner. And the way that the Success Doctrine talks about helping you do that is they take those big goals, put them into micro goals, and instead of saying just use willpower, you just have to have willpower to get it done. There's something stronger than willpower.
Mm-hmm.
It's called consistency. It's called changing your habits. When you change your habits, you consistently do a thing.
Yes.
If you consistently get up every day and say, I'm going to make Infinite Perspectives that much of a better platform, it's going to continue to get better.
Mm-hmm.
When people consistently work out, they consistently practice for sports,
Right.
they get better. When people consistently stay in business, regardless of failures, and they find ways, and they don't consider failures to be failures. They can figure failures to be study opportunities. That's what a failure actually is, an opportunity to study what didn't work and figure out what will work, strategize it, and continue to consistently do what works and incorporate that into your new habit patterns. And so if we want to succeed, we have to constantly create the habits of success.
Mm-hmm. So then you're talking about a strategic map of some sort.
A strategic map of the habits that you need to succeed in whatever the endeavor may be.
That's powerful, because I think a lot of times we question whether we're on the right path. We second guess sometimes even if we're on the right path. What does that look like in practice for someone who wants to shift their direction, shift out of procrastination, shift? What does that look like?
I love that, Linda.
For somebody who wants to shift out of procrastination, what I would recommend for that person, what the Success Doctrine recommends for that person, is that you go and you take the things that are hardest for you to do. Take the things that are hardest for you to do. You don't try to climb the whole mountain at one time.
Right.
And you start saying, what habits can I change that are going to make this get done? What habits can I change that are going to give me the result that I want? And you start to make habits and incremental goals based on, you start to make incremental goals. And
like
then
those micro goals, like those
micro goals. Yeah, micro goals.
Mm-hmm.
And then you make habits that propel those micro goals, and you start getting them done. And what you do is you look at those wins. You reward yourself for those wins. That's the great thing about micro goals, because you don't have to win all at one time.
Right.
You can reward yourself for your wins as you go along. Okay, I've reached the goal of going this whole week and making sure I get to the gym every other day or every 5 days out the week, Monday through Friday. I can reward myself for that. And the reward has to be within the habits I'm allowed to have. So if the habits don't include eating wrong, I can't reward myself with a candy bar with the ice cream, but I can reward myself with some fruit, or I can reward myself with the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I can find a way within a positive habit set to reward myself. And so making sure that you reward yourself, that you uplift yourself, that if nobody else cheers you on, you become your biggest cheerleader.
Yes, yes. So at that point, then, what are the non-negotiable principles of winning according to the doctrine? The non-negotiables.
The non-negotiable principles of winning, I'm going to point to it again, are habits, habits, habits. Making sure that you have the right habits, that you have your habits aligned. Making sure that you're having a conversation with yourself every day. Mm-hmm. Every morning should include some meditation, and it should include some positive self-talk.
Very good.
Every day you should have a conversation with yourself. Forget the conversations you have with other people. I'm not saying that they're not important, but they're not as important as the habits that you have, that is the conversations you have with you.
Mm-hmm. And that intuitive
you have with you are the most important.
Yeah.
because they're going to stick with you the most.
Right.
If I tell you you're a winner, you might feel like, oh, he's just saying that he's trying to flatter me. Somebody else tells you a winner, wow, these people are saying I'm a winner, but I don't feel like it. You're not going to be a winner. But when you start to tell yourself you're a winner, you start to attract the things needed to win. You have to have that winning aura so that when people see you and come around you, they don't feel, they know that they're around a winner.
Amen.
When you're around winners, think about when you've been around people who we consider winners. They kind of don't have to say anything. You can go into a party or you can go into an event, a community event, whatever it is, and you can see the winners. They're very bold. They're well-mannered. Why? Because they know they're winners. They don't have to shrink.
Yeah.
You know, winners are like, I'm a winner. I'm a winner. You have to know that you're a winner. You have to have that self-confidence.
And you got to watch the way you talk to yourself. That
Exactly.
inner dialogue, intuitive conversation, man. That's something.
Yeah, because that inner dialogue is what can help you or harm you the most. That inner dialogue is what can help you or harm you the most.
Thank you for repeating that.
When you're having those conversations with yourself and you're telling yourself, I need to do this. I'll talk to myself all the time. My name is Robert, but family and friends call me Bobby. And I'll look in the mirror and I'll say, Bobby, what are you doing? That's not the activity of a winner. You need to do X, Y, and Z. As a matter of fact, you know what? It doesn't seem to be resonating with you enough. So as soon as we get done with this conversation, you're going to go write that down. Put your goals on paper.
Awesome.
It's important to you. Once a week, write it down. This is what I need to do. This is what I need to change. I'm going to make this a habit, doing this every day. That changes a person. It really does.
It does. And I'm grateful that you pointed that out. Self-reflection, for one. You mentioned that. You did mirror work. Mirror work is so valid. You know, you're speaking to yourself. You're speaking life into yourself. And what better way of having that reflection back to you so you see your stance. You know, you mentioned when you walk into a room, you know, a person that is known or confident, they exude that confidence, right? So if you're doing mirror work and you're sluggish, you're going to see that reflected. So you're prompted to, wait a minute, what you doing? Just like you said, Bobby, what are you doing? You know, shoulders back, you know, lift your head high. So it's a mirror work. You're channeling yourself and you're pretty much reshaping yourself into embodying who it is that you know you already are, because you were already gifted this. You stated it in the beginning. It is your birthright, right? So you're embodying that. And that's why it's so important. And I love that you brought that up, and journaling, you know, reflecting on your own words, like that is power in itself, to just go through your day and reflect back on what it is you need to do better or what it is that you did right, and make sure that you continuously do that, because you mentioned consistency earlier as well, that all of these things come together for the betterment of you, right? Mind, body, and soul. And I love that when we're talking about transformation, which leads into transformation, justice, and purpose. Robert, you're such an amazing person. You know, you talked a little bit backstage about what you've done community-wise, and you talked a lot about community already on the platform. You've become a voice in justice reform, a Prison Scholar Fund board member, and a member of Dream.org's Federal Advisory Committee. Tell us, what called you into this level of advocacy?
Well, the thing that called me into this level of advocacy is when I was incarcerated, when I started my own personal change journey, it quickly became a change journey for a lot of other people. Some younger guys came to me and they said, hey, man, can you help us, show us how to get in college? And it was a trip because, as I told you, I used to be gang affiliated. And so at the time I had been a Crip. The young dudes who came to me and asked me to help them get into school were Bloods. And so I was impressed by that. Like, yeah, help us.
Yeah.
Help us. And so I'm like, oh yeah, no problem. Then the young Crips in the institution came to me and, hey man, can you help us get into school? Yes, I can. Then it went a step further. As people know, prison is a very racist place, especially out here in California. White guys, Latino guys, people that wouldn't typically be the ally of a Black man, period, in some cases. Can you help me get in school? And not once did I hesitate with anybody. Not once did I hesitate with anybody.
Wonderful.
Then it got to the point where I ended up setting up a book exchange. You weren't supposed to have a book exchange in federal prison, but I set one up anyways where we would trade books so that people wouldn't necessarily have to pay for all their books. If you're using this book, bring your book over here and we can trade off some books. Maybe you can sell them to somebody for a discount to make sure that everybody had books to go to school. And people who didn't have any money or anything, I would make sure they got books. I became the team leader. First, I became the administrative assistant to the counselor who was doing it. And I became the team leader for an at-risk youth program in there. It's called Start Taking the Alternative Route Today. The counselor who ran it, his name was Cepeda. His sister, Miss Cepeda, was the one who recommended me to get into it. She was the librarian. And it was just a whole dynamic situation, as I was doing that federal time. And once I committed to change, once you commit to change, once you commit to doing things and you begin to build the habits for them,
yes,
the things that you need, you'll attract. And so not only did I attract the things I needed to go to school, the Prison Scholar Fund doesn't give out a lot of scholarships. I had been looking for scholarships. The librarian had been going on the computer in the library, her computer, and she would tell me, these are scholarships you can apply for, right? They're allowed to tell you what you can apply for. So I started applying. She said, keep applying, because she had asked me, like, are you going to do your bachelor's degree? And I said, well, no. In California, we have something called a BOG grant, Board of Governors grant, where if you're incarcerated or if you're low income, that you can go to college for free. You just have to pay for your books. And so everybody in there was taking advantage of the Board of Governors grant to, do associate's degrees and whatever they needed to do. And at this point, I had, college pretty packed out and a lot of people participating in classes. And, a lot of guys just coming in on their own doing it. But I had inspired a lot of guys to get in college. And now I needed to go to the next level. And so with her help, with the librarian's help, I was able to find, after going through maybe 50 or 60 scholarships, and every day I would just get denials in the mail. It was, months. She said, I think if anybody's going to help you, I got the one that's going to help you. I went in the library to study. She called me to the office. I think I got one that's going to help you. I said, you think so? She said, well, the name of it is Prison Scholar Fund. They say they help people who've been incarcerated. Just fill out the application. I think you should fill this one out. I said, well, I'll try it. I filled it out. The person who runs the Prison Scholar Fund is a guy named Dirk Van Zelzen. And at the time, he was incarcerated. Dirk was incarcerated himself.
Wow.
He was running this Prison Scholar Fund. His dad was helping him run it. And so I sent in my application. We sent it to his dad who was out there. And I let them know about the work I had been doing in there with the youth and with helping other people get their education and all this stuff. I wrote an essay, and I happened to be one of the lucky ones that got through, right? And so they started funding me, and they kept funding me. There was a lady who was doing a play that my nephew was in, and I spoke to her because I was teaching screenwriting in there. And I won't put her full name out there, but I'll just say her name was Tanya. And that's her first name. I don't want to put her last name and everything out there. And when I talked to her, she said, you need to start going to school. And this wasn't anything romantic or anything. She was just a person who had a big heart and saw what I was doing and saw some of the stuff I wrote. I had sent some of the stuff I wrote. I was telling her I was going to school, and I said, "Yeah, I want to finish it, at least get a bachelor's degree." She said, "Well, you should finish it now." I said, I want to." I said, "But I'm trying to explain to you that I'm financially embarrassed, and so I'm not able to do it. But as soon as I get out, or as soon as I save up enough money, because I was working in Unicor factory inside the federal prison system, I said I'll start taking some classes, but I had to figure out how to pay for them." She said, "You don't understand. You really need to finish." I said, "I'm not trying to be rude, but I'm not capable. If I was, I would." She said, "You know what? I'll pay for them." So between her and the Prison Scholar Fund, I was able to finish a double bachelor's of science in small business management and marketing, graduated magna cum laude,
Congratulations. Yes.
and continued to get other people involved in college. They had a riot, and they ended up shipping me to the East Coast. Now I'm leaving Lombok, California. I'm going to Allenwood, Pennsylvania. When I got to the East Coast, immediately, I guess the educational staff had heard about me. And so I started to teach Black history. That was an experience because over there you have so many people who are so high on Black history, and they're like, how is this California boy who is a Christian and has been involved in gangs coming here to teach us about Black history? But, you know, education gave me the books and they gave me the platform. And I let some of the guys over there on the East Coast help me with some of it. And we put together an excellent Black history class that they loved, I loved, and the staff there was able to give us different stuff. And so it's just that once you begin to live a wired to win life, once you begin to change those habits, you begin to feel positive and upbeat. If you don't have the people, don't worry, they'll come.
Yes.
They will come. Everything you need will come your way in due time. So even through struggles, it's on the way.
That's beautiful. I'm so grateful that, you know, you were able to share that, and it just puts a light on, you know, anything is possible if you have the right support and the mindset. And with that, being empowered, what would you say returning citizens need most when re-entering society that the system often tends to overlook?
I think one of the things that the system tends to overlook when returning citizens re-enter society is the level of resource necessary for somebody to get started in society.
Yes.
Because when you come out, if you don't have any resources, you're coming out with a record, so you're going to have to, it's going to be, even I've had a hard time, you know, getting employment at times. It's going to be a struggle to get jobs sometimes because people are going to look at your record. They're not going to want to deal with you. In many instances, people are coming out and they haven't had the opportunity, or they haven't taken advantage of the opportunity to learn a trade or to get the education necessary to do what they need to do to live independently. So a lot of times they need a hand up, not a handout, a hand up.
Mm-hmm.
People coming out of incarceration, if you just give them the opportunity to have employers who are ready to hire them, who are truly ready to hire them, not employers who say, oh yeah, we accept incarcerated workers, and you go there and they tell you the only position they have for you is janitor. No, you need people who are really willing to accept them. And then the other thing that incarcerated people need that the system deprives them of is community. And the reason I say they deprive you of community, because when you get out from federal prison, right, where I got out of 6.5 years ago, when you get out of federal prison, you're told that you can't associate with anybody who's been convicted of felonies. You're not supposed to associate with them.
Right.
People who I had to associate with because I was doing community work and I was doing gang violence interruption, and because I was doing criminal justice reform, right? And they allowed that, but in most cases they don't. And so what happens is the people who are willing to build community with you, the people that you know, the other people who have left the streets, who have decided that, whatever their hustle was isn't for them anymore. The gang lifestyle isn't for them anymore, and they're trying to do something because they've been formerly incarcerated. They're no longer allowed to interact with you. So, I might have a homeboy Joey over here who might be able to get me a job, but I have to sneak around to even talk to Joey.
Mm-hmm.
I get caught going to the job site with Joey. If Joey gets caught giving me a ride to work or taking me around the community, introduce me to some people, Joey can potentially be arrested. Especially if we're from the same gang, which a lot of people understand, especially Blacks, Latinos, meaning you grew up in the same community, basically, then I'm not supposed to be around you. And if I'm not supposed to be around you, then how can I benefit from what you have to offer me in the way of resources if I'm not even supposed to talk to you? So I think that denying people the opportunity to interact with each other. Now, if they interact in a criminal manner, I understand law enforcement probation has to do what they have to do. But if they're having interactions and those interactions aren't criminal and aren't hurting anybody, then they need to be allowed to interact, because those interactions might be protecting society. Because if I can interact with the imaginary guy Joey over here, right, then, and Joey gets me a job, and that's one person that the community doesn't have to worry about. And if there's another guy over here named Marty and I can interact with him and he gets me into something else positive, that's less time that they have to worry about me. And now I'm doing positive stuff and I'm pulling people out the flame. And so just the negative view that they have of those interactions hurts.
Maybe what we have to do is find advocacy to help kind of modify that probationary law to accommodate that. In other words, have some organizations that build platforms for that kind of community that you express. I'm feeling you completely, because as I explained, my late husband, Arthur Morris, went through the same issues. And I think about the prison pipeline for our children that's so already there. Okay. How do we empower youth through mentorship and mindset training and early intervention? It has to be crucial. What is your input there?
It is crucial. And I'm actually involved in that out here with Shafat Outreach, right, in San Diego. And so, like I said, we do gun and gang violence interruption, but we also have youth that we mentor, and we also have places where we go and we mentor youth. And there are other people out here in San Diego doing the same work, and there are people in LA doing the same work. How do I know this? Because on an annual basis, there's something called the CVI, the Community Violence Intervention Conference. They hold it in LA, and when you go there, you see all these people from these different organizations across the country that are doing this kind of work. And they're not just reaching out to gang members. In many instances, they're reaching out to youth. Yeah. And one of the reasons I feel it's so important to reach out to youth is because I went to a school, right? A guy asked us to come out to a school. Said there's a lot going on here, but kids being involved in gangs and fighting and everything. And I said, wow, these people are young. Well, the average age that people get involved in gangs now, the average grade where they start getting involved, or the lowest grade where I'm not going to say the average, but the lowest grades where they start getting involved in gangs now are like third and fourth grade.
Yeah, absolutely.
And when you go to like gang events, you might see a baby with the blue rag diaper or a red rag diaper or a red or blue rag blanket on them. And, you know, I mean, I'm from California, so it's mostly Crips and Bloods, but Same thing with, GDs, Vice Lords, Latin Kings, Sureños, Norteños, whatever gangs they are.
Really indoctrination.
And they're getting involved earlier and earlier, because what happens is you have youth that have generations, they have grandfather, some of them have great grandfather, grandfather, dad, mom, brothers and sisters, and they want to do something different, but this is a family legacy.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they're trying to break out of a family legacy like that, we have to be willing to say, it's okay, I got you. I'm not going to look down at you. I'm not going to turn my nose up at you. I'm going to reach out to you. I'm going to wrap my arms around you, and we're going to help you do what you need to do.
Ironically, that almost sounds like racism. It does the same kind of indoctrination. It starts with infants.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, and the thing about racism, as I told you, I've been incarcerated 8 times. The 8th time is when I decided to make the changes. And the thing about racism is it starts very young. Before society got back to being as bad as it is with racism, I used to always tell people society is going to get worse and worse with racism. Because what happens is people look up to who they consider the gangsters. And in the white community, those people who are considered the gangsters are, unfortunately, the racists. They don't gangbang against and kill each other. Their whole doctrine is to go against people of other races.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is unfortunate. There are people who you'll meet in prison who don't even want to be part of the whole racial thing. Because of the way things are set up when you're incarcerated, they have to be. And then a lot of times people will come in and they won't be like that, but when they leave, they're fully bought in, they're fully sold out to it.
Mm-hmm.
And so across every community of human beings, we have these issues.
Yeah. How does your own transformation give credibility and connection to the young people you serve? You probably have said some of this, but I think it needs to be reiterated, what you've been through and how your own transformation did something.
Well, first of all, my own transformation gives me a bond with them. I've literally been through what you're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't believe it, I can pick up my phone right here and I can show you, news articles, incarceration records. I can show you I've been through what you're going through.
Right.
In addition to being able to show you if I need to, I can talk to you about these things in an insider way that your probation officer and your teacher can. And so I've really been through it. And when you talk to me, I've really been through it. And so by knowing that I've really been through it, then when I give you my perspective on different things, everybody isn't going to say, I'm not going to be able to change everybody, and I understand that. But the ones who I can reach, I am able to reach because I've been through what they're going through. The other point is, one of the things that we have to do, that I always do, is I explain to the youth. I say, look at the world. Think about your block. Think about your big homies. Who do you look up to? Who's having the money? Who's got the power in your hood? You don't have to tell me, but just think about this person. And as they're thinking about that person, I say, now, where do they live at? Oh, he has a house. He has an apartment. What do they drive? Oh, he drives a Benz. He might drive a Bentley. Benz, Bentley. He's got 5 or 6 cars. Does he own a car lot? No. Does he own an apartment building? Is that house only one house he owns, or does he own a tract of houses? And then I explain to them how, by me kind of getting started later in life, I'm still trying to catch up to this level. But if they start now, rather than being a gangster and going back and forth to prison, they can be the guy who owns the Mercedes-Benz dealership. They can be the guy who owns that set of luxury apartments that their homeboy is living in.
Yeah.
You can own these things. Business is the way to go. They talk about Pablo Escobar, and they talk about Chapo Guzman and all these big drug dealers. And when they talk about them, they tell you when Chapo Guzman got arrested, for example, they say this was the richest drug dealer ever. He was worth $1 billion, you know, and then he might have been worth $2 billion. But was he worth the billions that some of these people are worth now?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we actually have, in addition to white people having hundreds of billion, we have blacks and Latinos, you know, not a whole bunch of them, that are worth 7, 8, 10 billion. There are people in Africa that are worth billions. There are a whole bunch of people in this world that are moving into that $1 billion bracket. I'm not going to say a whole bunch that are moving into that billion or multi-billion dollar bracket. There are more people making big money off of business, off of the boardroom, than there is off the block. You have to understand where the real money is. It's on the blocks in the boardroom, and that has to be constantly explained and pounded into today's youth that the real money is not on the block. It's in the boardroom.
I love that.
Yeah,
I absolutely love it. Thank you for sharing that. And when we're talking about business and entrepreneurship, you know, you were also the creator of Criminal Adaptations, which is a powerful film in its own right. What message were you hoping to deliver through that project?
When we did Criminal Adaptations, that's another organization that I deal with, nonprofit, called the Playwrights Project, right? And so when I came home, they were doing writing plays, stage plays. I had been writing screenplays, and they invited me in, come over here. We're writing stage plays, and we want to, you know, support you and show you how to do stage plays. So I was like, okay. So I, you know, started dealing with them and going to their meetings and participating in some of the stuff they do. And eventually there was a director named Christopher Boyd who came, and he was like, I have some funding, and I want to take a few of these people from your program, and I want to have them make short films. And so I was one of the people from the program. As a matter of fact, I was very highly recommended by Cecilia Kuma. I hope I said her last name right, but the director of the Playwrights Project. And so we got to put something together. And when I put something together, I said, I want mine to be something I haven't wrote, which is sci-fi. But I also want it to be something that stands in the criminal justice reform space. I wanted to have a message. I don't just want to write it strictly for entertainment purposes. I want it to be entertaining, but I wanted to tell a story. And so the story that I was telling with Criminal Adaptations was the story of how corruption against inmates often goes unlooked. You know, it goes unseen, unreported, and ignored even when it is reported. And so that's kind of what that was about, how, because it's always been something I posited since I was pretty young. I was in my early teens, that if mankind is ever going to travel to other planets, we won't be living under glass bubbles with the air being pumped in that way, and all this stuff that people show on movies that they used to think when I was a kid. We won't have to travel with spacesuits on. What they'll do is they will genetically modify human beings so that we're able to populate other planets. Right. And so other planets we go to, it won't be that we'll run into another, and when I say race, I don't mean ethnic race, I mean race like another race of people, calling it human race one race. We'll run into an alien race. It will be that humans will have been modified genetically so that they can withstand conditions, for instance, on Mars, which is one of the things that we talk about. I'm pretty sure you did, Michelle, took the time to look at Criminal Adaptations. It's only 10 minutes. And so they're modifying these people so that they can travel, but they're not telling them what they're going to do to them. They're using them.
Yeah.
And the reason that's important is quite often inmates are abused. They're experimented on. All these different things happen.
Yeah.
So using that to highlight that. And right now I'm working on a feature-length film. I won't give too much away about it.
No.
But it's based on Criminal Adaptations, but feature-length. And so it brings more into focus about that, about corruption within incarceration.
Mhm. Let's talk about that Genesis Life Strategies. That's a powerful name. Tell us what this organization does and how it uses business tools to change lives.
Well, the way that Genesis Life Strategies uses business tools to change lives, and I've had it for a while, but I had kind of like let it go for a while. I finished my MBA degree, so it's just getting started back up. But the way that and the tools do work for the people I've used it with. And that program was born while I was in federal prison.
Mm-hmm.
That program was born while I was in federal prison. So I had a homework assignment for an executive strategy class for my Bachelor's of Science degree. And the homework assignment was a final project. And the final project was that it was writing the catalog. And it was print-based courses we were taking in there. And then you would have to go to the library and the prison staff would administer any testing that you had to do just to make sure it was on the up and up. But that being said, one moment, quick swig of water.
Oh, go ahead. I've been drinking all the while. We've been making you do all the talking.
Even when I'm on stage, I always have to have some water here.
Right, I understand.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what they end up doing, right, is when I turned in my assignment,
Mhm.
they said for people who were on the street free, a lot of military people use Adams State University because they had the print-based courses, and other people, right? It's a college that's located in Alamos, Colorado. So for the free people that were doing it, you need to turn in a strategy plan for a business, thorough strategy plan. They wanted it to be, I think, like 25-page plan. You know, they gave you all the specifications, double print, Colibri body, all this different stuff, right? And they told you everything that it had to have in it, right? You know, mission, vision, the whole 9 yards,
Mhm.
strategic steps, and you know, all of it, right? For the people who are incarcerated, the instructor said, tell me what you plan to do when you get out. I don't want to hear any pie in the sky. Make it realistic, and that'll do for my incarcerated people. And when I read that, it blew me away. I was like, wow, that's an insult. Do you really want us to learn and understand this? And so, you know, I didn't want to whine for anybody else, because anybody else, if they want that easy grade, you've done the rest of the work, it's cool. But for me, I was like, oh no, I felt insulted. And so I went and did what I call a strategic life plan using the tools of business.
Mm.
And so for the strategic life plan, you had to have a vision statement, a mission statement. You had to have strategic steps to reach. You had to have a strategy, you know, strategic planning to reach those steps. You had to do pestle analysis, political, economic, social, cultural, technological, physical, environmental, and legal regulatory analysis. You had to do SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats, where
I was wondering what that meant.
the best. And they drive your opportunities, your weaknesses, drive the things that are threats for you in business. And how are you going to deal with those weaknesses? Are you going to outsource, or are you going to shore up those weaknesses into strengths? What's your competency? What's your strategic advantage? And so you had to have all these things for this class. And to make it interesting, because I didn't do it as a class, I did it as a homework assignment.
Mhm.
Once I turned it into a class, because my professor wrote me back and he said, man, this is really good. I've never seen anything like it. You should teach it at your school. So when I went to the library in Lompoc to see, you know, to ask about teaching it, he had already wrote them. So I took it to the library to see if I could teach in the library. And I took it to the psychology department to see if I could teach there. And so the library was kind of lagging. So I said, okay, well, I'm talking to the psychology department. And the psychology department was lagging. I said, okay, well, maybe the library would do it. And then at the same time, they both said they wanted the class. Yeah, like don't do it over. We're going to do it over here. So I ended up doing it in both departments, and people really loved the class. And so when I got out, I said, you know what? At some point of me being out, I'm going to refine this, and I'm going to teach it as a life coach. And so that's how Genesis Life Strategy came about. At first, it was just called Strategic Life Classes. But I said, since it's a new start, and I am a Christian man, let's start from the beginning, Genesis. So that's where the name Genesis Life Strategy came.
Yeah.
So I have a question for you. You've pretty much answered majority of the questions that we had when it comes to what people should look for, how should people go about, aligning themselves to winning for success. And you've pretty much listed everything, in order when it comes to your book and, the strategies that they need to implement. Where can people find your book, your coaching programs, or connect with the Genesis Life Strategies?
They can find my books are available on Amazon. So the main book, Wired to Win the Success Doctrine, available on Amazon, $14.95, basically $15. There are 3 workbooks because even though it's the same book, everybody who reads the book is going to have different needs. Now, in book form, I can't tailor it to every single person's needs, but I can tailor it to different demographic and different group needs. And so there is this one, the Wired to Win workbook for the general public. There is this one, the Wired to Win youth workbook for younger people between the ages of like 16 and 24.
Love that.
And then there's this one, the Wired to Win reentry workbook for people who are about to return to society or who have returned to society within the last 5 or 6 months, or even if you've been out for a year. And the reason for the workbooks is so that when you read the book, if you're having a hard time implementing some of the strategies that you're reading about, if you're not quite catching them, because everybody doesn't catch everything on the first pass, then doing the work in the workbook will put you right in line with the strategies for your life, for re-entering society, or for younger people. And right now on Amazon, you can go buy the book. But with the workbook, you have a choice. You can either pay the $12.95 for the workbook on Amazon.
Very reasonable.
Yeah, very reasonable. But if you have Kindle, you can get the workbook for free.
Ah, wonderful.
Awesome. Love that.
So, and I was more than happy to do that. When Amazon told me they wanted to run that type of promotion, because it gives a person who buys the book and says, I need the workbook, because I don't know everybody's financial situation. So what it does is it gives them the opportunity to get a hold of that workbook to go with their book, and they can take pencil and paper and put it down, but they have everything, on Kindle.
The wonderful thing about that workbook, the pen is the eye of the spirit. When you write, you're having a conversation with the creator of the Most High divine consciousness. You're communicating. People don't realize the value of pen to paper because we're so much technology. I was reading a book at the doctor's office with my grandson, and he kept looking at the book because he probably hadn't seen a book in a long time, So imagine the power of your book with that workbook and how it can ingrain that information into your being. That's excellent. Thank you, Robert, for that.
Yeah, and as a coach, one of the things as a coach, right, as somebody who mentors and does life coaching, then when I looked at this because the life coaching program definitely costs a lot more than a book or a book and a workbook.
Right.
but for under $30.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody who's going through some things can grab a book, grab a workbook, and experience some coaching.
Yeah.
Mm.
They can get that. And if they have kids, if you're at a school or you're at a community center, you can contact me and I'll make sure that I give you a discount on some of it.
Okay, now.
Wow.
Love that word. You know,
You heard it here.
there you go. Right. Robert, your journey is proof that destiny can be rewritten at any moment in your life. So before we close, what is the one message you want to leave our listeners with tonight?
Well, first of all, I want to tell them how to contact me.
Yes, we're going to make sure they do that.
Okay. So robertwoodmba@gmail.com.
Mm-hmm.
But the one message that I want to leave our listeners with before we close tonight is that we are all born wired to win.
Mm-hmm.
Me, both of these lovely ladies on this podcast with me, and every one of you who are out there listening, we're all born wired to win. And if, like myself, that winning wiring gets crossed up or it becomes dysfunctional, you can get that winning wiring back. You can instill that winning wiring. You can rewire yourself and start winning again.
Yeah.
The book Wired to Win, the Success Doctrine can help you. The principles we talked about tonight can help you. The workbook can help you. But no matter what, if you're struggling, if you're not moving the way you want to in life, please rewire yourself.
Rewire.
Let's start winning.
Mm-hmm. So, Robert, if you had the opportunity to speak to your younger self, young Robert, what would that conversation look like? What would you tell the version of you who didn't know he was wired to win?
I would tell my younger self, I would say, listen, man, you have all this confidence. You're one of the young people that feel like you can do everything. Stay the course. Right now, you're winning wired in attack. As soon as you compromise yourself, as soon as you start cutting deals and making excuses to why it's okay to venture off and do things that you're not supposed to do, as soon as you accept everybody else is doing it, as soon as you say that you want instant gratification, you're going to start depriving yourself of opportunities. You're going to get a record. That record is going to follow you. There are going to be opportunities that you can't have. So what I want you to do, Robert, what I want you to do, young person, is I want you to stay out of trouble. I want you to read up, pay attention, find a mentor. They're every place these days. And stay wired to win.
I love that, man. Very informative and inspirational message. And, you know, Robert, we just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for your wisdom, your transparency, and your unwavering dedication to helping people win. Your story is the definition of transformation with purpose. And to our viewers, stay curious, stay empowered, and as always, keep expanding your infinite perspectives toward a world where every person has access to the tools they need to succeed.
And remember that victory is never an accident. It's the moment your mind, your mission, and your courage finally agree on who you were born to become.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And remember, when you rewrite your story, you don't just change your life, you change your legacy. And in that very moment of awakening, you finally realize you are built for so much more, far more. Suddenly, the world becomes too small for your excuses. Because real transformation doesn't begin when you win. It begins the moment you refuse to remain who you once were. This is Michelle Diamond.
And I'm Linda Boston.
And until next time,
keep rising,
keep reflecting,
and keep expanding your infinite perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
How you gonna change the things around you? Oh, what you gonna love inside of you? Oh, when you gonna hear his revelation?